Well-being is what is ultimately good for a person. Also called welfare and quality of life, it is a measure of how well life is going for someone. It is a central goal of many individual and societal endeavors. Subjective well-being refers to how a person feels about and evaluates their life. Objective well-being encompasses factors that can be assessed from an external perspective, such as health, income, and security. Individual well-being concerns the quality of life of a particular person, whereas community well-being measures how well a group of people functions and thrives. Various types of well-being are categorized based on the domain of life to which they belong, such as physical, psychological, emotional, social, and economic well-being. Theories of well-being aim to identify the essential features of well-being. Hedonism argues that the balance of pleasure over pain is the only factor. Desire theories assert that the satisfaction of desires is the sole source of well-being. According to objective list theories, a combination of diverse elements is responsible. Often discussed contributing factors include feelings, emotions, life satisfaction, achievement, finding meaning, interpersonal relationships, and health. Well-being is relevant to many fields of inquiry. Positive psychology studies the factors and conditions of optimal human functioning. Philosophy examines the nature and theoretical foundations of well-being and its role as a goal of human conduct. Other related disciplines include economics, sociology, anthropology, medicine, education, politics, and religion. Even though the philosophical study of well-being dates back millennia, research in the empirical sciences has only intensified since the second half of the 20th century. Well-being is what is ultimately good for a person or in their self-interest. It is a measure of how well a person's life is going for them. In the broadest sense, the term covers the whole spectrum of quality of life as the balance of all positive and negative things in a person's life. More narrowly, well-being refers specifically to positive degrees, while ill-being denotes negative degrees. The precise definition of well-being is disputed and varies across disciplines and cultures. Some characterizations focus on a single element, like happiness, while others include multiple components, such as good physical and mental health, positive emotions, an engaged and flourishing lifestyle, inner harmony, and positive interpersonal relationships. Some definitions also include material conditions, such as income, safety, and low pollution. Although discussions of well-being usually focus on humans, the term also covers other animals in its widest sense. As a person-specific value, well-being contrasts with impersonal value or value simpliciter. A thing has impersonal value if it is good for the world at large by making it a better place, without being restricted to one specific person. Well-being, by contrast, is what is good for or relative to someone. While personal and impersonal values often align, they can diverge. For example, if an individual seeks a personal gain that is bad from a wider perspective. The exact relation between these two types of value is disputed. According to one proposal, impersonal value is the sum of all personal values. Well-being is typically understood as an intrinsic or final value, meaning that it is good in itself, independent of external factors. Things with instrumental value, by contrast, are only good as means leading to other good things, like the value of money. Well-being is further distinguished from moral, religious, and aesthetic values. For instance, donating money to a charity may be morally good, even if it does not increase the donor's well-being. The terms quality of life, good life, welfare, prudential value, personal good, and individual utility are often used as synonyms of well-being. Similarly, the words pleasure, life satisfaction, and happiness are employed in overlapping ways with well-being, although their precise meanings differ in technical contexts like philosophy and psychology. Pleasure refers to individual feelings about what is attractive. Life satisfaction is a positive attitude a person has towards their life as a whole. Happiness is sometimes identified with life satisfaction or understood as a positive balance of pleasure over pain. Well-being is a crucial goal of many human endeavors, both on individual and societal levels. Various attitudes and emotions are directed at well-being, like caring for someone or experiencing pity, envy, and ill will. Well-being is the state that egoists seek for themselves and altruists aim to increase for others. Many disciplines examine or are guided by considerations of well-being, including ethics, psychology, sociology, economics, education, public policy, law, and medicine. The word well-being comes from the Italian term benessere. It entered the English language in the 16th century. Types of well-being can be categorized by how they are measured, who they belong to, and which domain of life they affect. Some researchers limit their inquiry to one specific type while others investigate the interrelations between different types. Subjective well-being is the measure of how people feel about and evaluate their own lives. It encompasses both affective and cognitive components. A person has high affective well-being if they have many pleasant experiences and few unpleasant ones. High cognitive well-being occurs when a person evaluates their life positively, making a global assessment that things are going well. Subjective well-being is measured using questionnaires in which individuals report the quality of their experiences. Single-item measures provide the most simple approach, focusing on a single scale, like asking participants to rate how content they are with their lives on a scale from 1 to 10. Multi-item scales include questions for distinct aspects of subjective well-being, with the advantage of reducing the influence of the wording of any single question. They have separate questions for domains such as the presence of positive affects, the absence of negative affects, and overall life satisfaction, which they combine into a comprehensive index. Objective well-being encompasses objective factors that a person's life is going well. Unlike subjective well-being, these factors can be assessed and quantified from an external perspective. They include personal, social, economic, and environmental aspects such as health, level of education, income, housing, amount of leisure time, and security. By relying on objective data, measures of objective well-being are less affected by cultural and personal biases influencing self-reports. However, it is not universally accepted that objective well-being is a form of well-being in the strictest sense. This doubt is based on the idea that well-being is essentially a subjective phenomenon tied to a person's experience. According to this view, objective factors influence and indicate well-being but are not themselves forms of well-being. Some inquiries focus only on subjective or objective well-being. Others combine both perspectives in their investigation, including questions about how the two are related. It is possible for subjective and objective well-being to diverge. For example, a person may feel subjectively happy despite scoring low on objective measures, like low income and frail health. Individual well-being concerns the quality of life of a particular person and is the main focus of disciplines like psychology and philosophy. Community well-being applies the concept of well-being to a group of people. It encompasses a broad range of economic, social, environmental, and cultural aspects that influence how the community functions and thrives while ensuring that the community's needs are fulfilled. One view sees community well-being as the sum of individual well-beings while others emphasize that the relation between the two is more complex. Individual and community well-being often support each other. For instance, high individual well-being can lead a person to contribute more to their community, and a well-functioning community can make its members happy. However, there can also be tensions, like when changes necessary for community well-being conflict with the individual well-being of certain members. Closely related to community well-being are categories of well-being defined for specific demographic groups. For instance, child well-being emphasizes health, education, material security, and social development in a loving and nurturing environment. Other examples include women's, elderly, student, and employee well-being. Various types of well-being are categorized based on the domain of life to which they belong. Physical well-being concerns the domain of the body as the capacity to engage in physical activities and the absence of illness and bodily pain. It includes general health considerations and the ability to perform one's social role without being hindered by physical limitations. Psychological well-being, also called mental health, is a state of mind characterized by internal balance. It involves the absence or successful management of disorders and disturbances, together with the abilities to cope with challenging situations, maintain positive relationships, and cultivate personal growth. It is closely linked to intellectual, spiritual, and emotional well-being. Intellectual well-being encompasses well-functioning cognitive abilities and traits, such as critical thinking, problem-solving, and curiosity. Spiritual well-being is a state in which people find purpose in life and have inner peace, self-confidence, and a sense of identity. Emotional well-being involves the capacities to comprehend, articulate, and regulate emotions, together with an overall positive mood. Hedonic well-being refers to a life rich in pleasurable experiences and devoid of suffering. Eudaimonic well-being is a form of personal fulfillment in which an individual flourishes by striving for excellence and actualizing their innate potentials. Social well-being concerns the quality and number of interpersonal connections, including how well a person functions in their social environment and the level of social support available to them. Economic well-being refers to the economic situation of a person, such as the resources and skills they have in regard to income, job opportunities, and financial stability. Further types of well-being include financial, cultural, political, and environmental well-being. Theories of well-being aim to identify the essential features or components of well-being. They focus on the nature of well-being itself rather than its external causes or conventional indicators used to measure it. For example, money and medicine can contribute to well-being as external causes but are not themselves forms of well-being. A traditionally influential approach categorizes theories of well-being into hedonism, desire theories, and objective list theories. This classification does not cover all theories, and the different categories are not always mutually exclusive. In some cases, distinct theories recommend different lifestyles, while in others, they advocate for the same lifestyle but provide different reasons for why it is good. Hedonism about well-being, also called prudential hedonism, holds that pleasure and pain are the only factors of well-being. It states that how well a life goes for a person depends entirely on how it feels to live this life, expressed as the balance of pleasure over pain. One view sees pleasure and pain as bodily sensations, like the pleasure of eating delicious food and the pain of injuring a leg. However, hedonists generally take a wider perspective, characterizing pleasure and pain broadly as any experience that feels good or bad. This broader understanding includes the intellectual pleasure of reading an engaging book and the sorrow of losing a loved one. According to quantitative hedonism, the value of each episode of pleasure and pain depends only on its intensity and duration. Qualitative hedonism, an alternative perspective, also considers non-quantitative factors, such as the distinct quality of an experience. One criticism of hedonism acknowledges that some pleasures have value but rejects that this is the case for all pleasures. According to this view, certain pleasures have no value and may even be bad for a person, such as sadistic pleasures from torturing animals. Another objection questions whether pleasure is the only thing of value for individuals, citing things like virtue, achievement, friendship, and the satisfaction of desires as distinct sources. An influential counterexample to hedonism, proposed by philosopher Robert Nozick, 1938–2002, imagines an experience machine that simulates a life filled with pleasures, which would be ideal from the perspective of hedonism. Pointing out that life in this virtual simulation lacks authenticity, Nozick argues that mere pleasure by itself is not the only source of value. According to desire theories, the satisfaction of desires is the only source of well-being. This means that individuals have well-being when they get what they want. Desires are subjective attitudes directed at things or states, like the desire to eat potato chips or become famous. Desires present conditions that are either fulfilled or frustrated depending on whether the desired state of affairs is actualized. Desire theories have some overlap with hedonism because people desire pleasure and the satisfaction of desires is typically pleasurable. However, desire theorists argue that people may desire other goods besides pleasures, emphasizing the diversity of desires and the individual differences from one person to another. For instance, some people prioritize family and health, while others primarily seek career success, wealth, knowledge, or spiritual enlightenment. As a result, the concrete path to well-being can vary greatly from person to person based on their subjective preferences. Critics of desire theories point out that people sometimes desire things that are bad for them. For example, a child's desire to eat nothing but candy could lead to serious health problems and diminish well-being rather than increase it. In response, some modified versions of desire theories have been proposed to avoid this counterexample. They argue that only the satisfaction of well-informed desires contributes to well-being, excluding desires in which individuals do not fully consider or understand the negative consequences. Another objection holds that desire satisfaction is only good in a derivative sense. It asserts that a person desires something because they believe that it is good, meaning that the value primarily resides in the desired object rather than in the satisfaction of the desire. Objectivist theories state that a person's well-being depends on several different factors. These factors can include subjective components, like pleasure and desire satisfaction, but also encompass objective factors that enhance a person's well-being independent of whether they subjectively care about them. Objectivist theorists have proposed diverse lists of items to cover a wide variety of elements contributing to well-being, such as health, friendship, achievement, knowledge, and autonomy. Some versions argue that each element on the list is valuable by itself, while others hold that they complement each other and only promote well-being when combined. One criticism of objectivist theories asserts that they define an incoherent concept of well-being by including diverse elements that have little in common. Another objection challenges the proposed objectivity of objectivist theories, arguing that well-being is essentially a subjective phenomenon. According to this view, what is good for a person depends on their subjective attitude, and imposing an external definition of what is good leads to alienation. One categorization distinguishes between subjectivist, objectivist, and hybrid theories. Subjectivist theories understand well-being as a purely subjective phenomenon characterized by the individual's own perspective, mental states, and attitudes. Objectivist theories rely only on objective factors in their definition, like health and achievement. Hybrid theories incorporate both subjective and objective components. For example, one version states that well-being consists in the subjective appreciation of objective goods. A further distinction is between monist and pluralist theories. Monist theories hold that a single good is responsible for well-being, meaning that all types of well-being share the same essential features. Pluralist theories see well-being as a diverse phenomenon that manifests in many forms without a single essence characteristic of all of them. For instance, objectivist theories are pluralist views, whereas hedonism and desire theories are monist views. Perfectionism identifies well-being with excellence by fulfilling human nature. Perfectionists discern key human abilities, such as rationality, knowledge, health, and dignity, holding that mastering and exercising them results in a life well lived. As an objectivist perspective, perfectionism asserts that the value of these goods does not depend on what the person thinks about them. Eudaimonism is a closely related view, asserting that a person has high well-being or flourishes in life by actualizing their inborn potentials. This view emphasizes that well-being is not a passive state but an active process. It manifests in an engaged lifestyle where individuals exercise virtues and rely on practical rationality to guide their decision-making. Value fulfillment theories see the fulfillment of evaluative attitudes as the basis of well-being. They are similar to desire theories but are not limited to desires and include other evaluative attitudes such as beliefs, feelings, and judgments about what is good. Most theories assume that the definition of well-being applies equally to everyone. Variabilism rejects this assumption and argues that different conceptions of well-being apply to different individuals. For example, one form of variabilism asserts that the nature of well-being in children differs from that in adults. Similarly, some theories of well-being are species relative, proposing that the essential features of well-being vary across distinct species. To avoid the deep disagreements surrounding the essential features of well-being, some researchers examine components and contributing factors independent of whether they are integral parts or external causes. For example, there is wide agreement that positive emotions, achievements, interpersonal relationships, and health typically contribute to well-being in some form, despite academic disagreements about their precise roles. Positive and negative feelings of pleasure and pain are basic experiences of what is attractive and aversive. Pleasures promote well-being while pains diminish it. Additionally, they also influence how individuals perceive their lives and interact with their social and physical environments. Pleasure and pain are commonly seen as opposites that counterbalance each other. This view suggests that the negative value of experiencing intense pain can be compensated by the positive value of experiencing intense pleasure. A different perspective argues that their relation is more complex, asserting that pleasure and pain influence experience, motivation, and well-being in distinct ways. As a result, one view holds that avoiding pain is more important than seeking pleasure. Emotions are temporary states of arousal. They include subjective experiences of pleasure and pain alongside other psychological phenomena, such as the evaluative assessment of a situation and a disposition to engage in certain types of behavior. For example, fear evaluates a situation as dangerous and is associated with a behavioral disposition to flee. Additionally, emotions are linked to physiological changes, like sweating, and bodily expressions that signal the emotional state to others. High well-being is associated with frequent positive emotions and infrequent negative ones. Moods are a closely related factor of well-being. They typically last longer than emotions and have a less specific origin and evaluative assessment. Life satisfaction is the subjective judgment of a person about how well their life is going. As an evaluation of a person's life as a whole, it is not limited to one particular area, like employment or financial status. Even though life satisfaction is influenced by the feelings and emotions a person currently has, it is not limited to them and encompasses a broader perspective. For example, a person may be overall satisfied with their life even if they are experiencing intense stomach pain at the moment. Individuals vary in how they arrive at their judgment of life satisfaction. For instance, some rely on instinctive gut feelings while others engage in deliberate and systematic reflections. Sometimes, individuals make inaccurate assessments and deceive themselves about their true quality of life, like cases of false happiness. Achievements or accomplishments refer to various types of success in life. They usually involve sustained effort in which an individual sets a goal they consider valuable and strives to actualize it. Achievements take many forms, such as earning an educational degree, attaining athletic success, contributing to scientific research, writing a well-received novel, starting a successful company, and bringing up a happy family. The contribution of achievements to well-being depends not only on their quantity but also on their significance. For example, a difficult achievement that helps many people, like finding a cure for cancer, may contribute more to the achiever's well-being than a trivial and pointless achievement, like determining the exact number of crumbs in a cookie jar. High achievement typically has a positive influence on other factors of well-being. For example, it can help a person make more friends and improve their standard of living. In some cases, however, it can have negative side effects, like when an obsession with success increases anxiety and alienates loved ones. Finding purpose or meaning in life is a closely related factor of well-being. It involves a judgment about the role and value of one's life in a wider context, but its precise characterization is disputed. Subjectivists argue that meaning is a subjective phenomenon. They suggest that people actively create it and make their lives meaningful by dedicating themselves to what they love. Objectivists contend that meaning is an objective phenomenon achieved by engaging with concrete values, like truth, moral goodness, and beauty. Some objectivists seek meaning in religious practice, arguing that a supernatural purpose is the source of meaning for individuals who work towards its realization. Other suggested sources of meaning include altruism, creativity, and self-actualization. The inability to find meaning in life can lead to an existential crisis, associated with anxiety and spiritual confusion. Positive social connections and interactions are further key elements of well-being. In addition to the intrinsic joy of engaging with others, social networks can offer material and emotional assistance during challenging times. They also help people build trust, share values, promote the exchange of information, and provide access to new opportunities. Different types of social relationships may influence well-being in different ways, such as the contrasts between friends, family members, romantic partners, co-workers, and teammates. Researchers often focus specifically on friendship, understood as a voluntary social relationship between people characterized by mutual concern, trust, and support. Friends tend to spend time with each other, enjoy each other's company, and know personal facts about one another. A central aspect of a friendship is its strength, distinguishing close friends from distant ones. Strength is determined by factors such as time spent together, trust, emotional intensity, and readiness to support each other in difficult. The number of friends a person has is another relevant factor, and having many friends is usually beneficial. However, if a person already has numerous friends, making even more friends may not significantly impact their well-being. Some people prefer large friend networks with looser connections, while others have few but strong friendships. Health is the overall condition in which an organism functions as it should, both physically and mentally. Good physical health is associated with high energy and the ability to perform everyday activities. Physical illnesses and disabilities can negatively impact well-being by causing pain, limiting mobility, and reducing the capacity to engage in enjoyable or necessary activities. Good mental health is a state of internal equilibrium in which mental capacities work the way they should. Mental disorders are associated with some form of cognitive impairment. They typically disrupt the equilibrium by causing some form of distress and can also limit the activities a person can engage in. Discrimination can amplify the negative effects of socially stigmatized illnesses and disabilities. Despite its general impact, health does not determine well-being, and some individuals affected by severe illnesses and disabilities report high levels of subjective well-being. The availability of healthcare services can mitigate negative effects by providing treatments to restore health or manage and alleviate symptoms. Similarly, adopting a healthy lifestyle, like regular physical activity and a balanced diet, is associated with long-term benefits to well-being. Knowledge is a cognitive success through which people stand in contact with reality, encompassing awareness of facts, know-how in the form of skills, and familiarity with individuals and situations. As such, it impacts well-being in various ways by influencing how people think, feel, and act. Knowledge assists in making good decisions, achieving positive outcomes, and avoiding negative ones. For example, knowledge of traffic rules helps prevent accidents, and knowledge of a disease can aid in its treatment. However, it is controversial whether all types of knowledge contribute to well-being. For example, knowing unimportant facts, such as the exact number of blades of grass in one's backyard, may have no real benefits. Practically relevant knowledge about oneself and deep insights into general truths of the world, by contrast, typically have a more substantial impact on well-being. In addition to knowledge, many related epistemic goods contribute to well-being, such as intelligence, problem-solving skills, creativity, open-mindedness, understanding, and wisdom. The value of epistemic goods is reflected in the emphasis given to education to foster the development of the minds of students. Autonomy and freedom are often discussed factors of well-being. They concern the possibility to choose, the ability to make informed decisions without coercion, and the capacity to act without being constrained by external forces. Individuals with a high level of autonomy and freedom tend to be more satisfied by having control over their lives. This enables them to decide between important options and choose a life that reflects their desires, preferences, and values. However, these conditions may not automatically lead to well-being and can sometimes have negative consequences. For example, a person lacking mental maturity and wisdom may freely engage in short-sighted egoism while ignoring negative long-term outcomes. Eudaimonic conceptions of well-being stress the importance of character traits and virtues. Character traits are stable and consistent aspects of personality that influence how people think, feel, and act. Traits associated with well-being include wisdom, courage, kindness, justice, temperance, and gratitude. Virtues are character traits that promote ethical excellence, such as dispositions to act morally and follow ethical principles. Virtue-based theories of well-being argue that virtue can be its own reward, for example, because living a morally upright life can be a fulfilling experience. However, virtue and well-being may also conflict, for instance, when altruistic service to a greater good requires personal sacrifice. Various social factors influence well-being, such as income, quality of work, work-life balance, personal security, and schooling. Similarly, the physical environment plays a role, with factors like housing conditions, pollution, noise, and access to nature and recreational areas. Relevant factors on the biological level include genetic makeup, age, neurotransmitters, and hormones. Models of well-being are frameworks to understand and measure well-being by clarifying its concept and components. Psychologist Ed Dieners, 1946-2021, tripartite model identifies three essential components of subjective well-being: the presence of positive affects, the absence of negative affects, and a positive evaluation of one's life as a whole. Psychologist Carol Ryff, 1950, present, proposed the six-factor model of psychological well-being. It states that the main elements are self-acceptance, personal growth, purpose in life, environmental mastery, autonomy, and positive relations with others. Focusing on social well-being, sociologist Corey Keyes developed a five-component model based on social integration, social contribution, social coherence, social actualization, and social acceptance. Psychologist Martin Seligman, 1942, present, articulated the PERMA theory as a model of well-being in general. Its five elements are positive emotions, engagement by following one's interests, interpersonal relationships, finding meaning in life, and accomplishments in the pursuit of success and mastery. Psychologist Michael Bishop developed the network model of well-being, which includes components such as feelings, emotions, attitudes, traits, and interactions with one's environment. This model emphasizes that the different components form a causal network by influencing and reinforcing each other in complex ways. Well-being is relevant to many fields of inquiry as a central phenomenon of human life. Grouped under the umbrella term science of well-being, some disciplines investigate the nature and components of well-being directly. Others study its causes and effects in specific domains of life, such as physical and mental health, social relationships, altruism, tolerance, income, and productivity. A central motivation of academic inquiry is the belief that well-being can be improved through appropriate measures. Some of these measures focus on individual lifestyle changes. Others take the form of societal interventions to alter how economic, medical, educational, workplace, and political institutions function. The study of well-being has a long history. Many of the main schools of thought originated in ancient philosophy, including hedonism, eudaimonism, and perfectionism. In the medieval period, philosophers built on and explored these ideas from a religious perspective. In the modern and contemporary eras, the approach became more secular and empirical. Philosophers have examined the relation between well-being and morality and analyzed its conceptual framework. Although philosophical research on well-being dates back millennia, interest in the topic within the empirical sciences has only intensified since the second half of the 20th century. Earlier work in the social and biomedical sciences focused more on identifying, treating, and preventing negative outcomes rather than exploring and promoting factors of positive functioning. This shift in focus led to the emergence of positive psychology. At the same time, fields like economics, sociology, and anthropology began using their distinct methodologies to explore the causes, indicators, and effects of well-being. Positive psychology is the branch of psychology dedicated to the study of well-being and related phenomena like happiness and flourishing. It examines the factors and conditions of optimal human functioning. This inquiry focuses both on individual factors, like the experience of pleasure and pain and the role of character traits, and on societal factors, such as the way social institutions influence human well-being. On the emotional level, positive psychologists examine the different types of positive emotions, such as joy, amusement, serenity, and love. They identify distinct components associated with mental evaluations, physiological changes, facial expressions, experience, and action tendencies. Investigated topics include the conditions under which positive emotions arise, how they contribute to overall well-being, and how they differ from negative emotions. On the cognitive level, positive psychology studies how intelligence, wisdom, and creativity improve quality of life. It further explores the relation between cognitive and affective processes, for example, how cognitive interpretations evoke emotions and how emotions prompt thought processes. Another central subfield concerns the role of personality, in particular, how individuals differ regarding personality traits and how these traits impact well-being. The VIA model, an influential framework in positive psychology, analyzes personality based on 6 main virtues: wisdom, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and transcendence. A closely related topic focuses on the role of the self, which encompasses the way a person conceptualizes and imagines themselves. Important factors for well-being are self-esteem, or how a person evaluates themselves, and authenticity, or the degree to which a person's behavior is subjectively consistent with their sense of self. A further area explores the role of social and physical circumstances. This includes the effects of trust and cooperation on group well-being and dilemmas in which self-interest conflicts with group interest. Having close relationships and engaging in altruistic behavior are generally beneficial to a person's well-being. In addition to the study of the different components and causes of well-being, positive psychologists also seek to understand how well-being changes over time. They are especially interested in the effects of major negative events, like the death of a child or bankruptcy, and aim to discern the psychological features that help people maintain their level of well-being, like self-regulation and an optimistic outlook. Philosophy examines the nature, function, and theoretical foundations of well-being. Philosophers explore its essential features by developing and comparing theories of well-being, such as hedonistic theories, desire theories, and objectivist theories. They also investigate the foundational principles of the scientific study of well-being. Considering that well-being has both subjective and evaluative aspects, they seek to determine whether scientific objectivity is possible and to what extent well-being can be quantified and compared between individuals. Some philosophers challenge the concept of well-being, understood as what is ultimately good for someone. For instance, philosopher G. E. Moore, 1873–1958, rejects the idea that something can be good relative to a person, asserting instead that all values are impersonal. Another criticism suggests that the concept of well-being is incoherent, arguing that it groups together diverse elements without a shared essence. Despite these criticisms, well-being plays a central role in ethics and value theory. Welfarism is the view that well-being is the only basic source of value. It holds that everything else, like intelligence and healthcare, is only valuable to the extent that it promotes well-being and reduces ill-being. Pure welfarists argue that the raw sum of everyone's well-being is all that matters. Impure welfarists consider additional factors, such as ensuring that well-being is distributed equally among people. This modification aims to avoid situations in which some people have abundantly good lives at the expense of others who experience severe deprivation. Another topic concerns the relation between moral virtue and well-being. According to one view, already considered in ancient Greek philosophy, the two always accompany each other, meaning it is in everyone's self-interest to act virtuously. An alternative perspective denies this close connection, stating that, at least in some cases, a virtuous person has to compromise their own well-being for the greater good. Philosophers further explore the relation between well-being and death. One position questions the common-sense idea that death is generally bad for a person. It argues that since death marks the end of a person's existence, there is nothing that can benefit or harm the person anymore. Animal ethicists apply the concept of well-being to non-human animals, examining what animal well-being consists in and how it affects the moral obligations of humans toward non-human animals. Welfare economics studies the influence of economic activity on well-being. One of its primary goals is to develop standards for evaluating and choosing between competing policy proposals based on their potential benefit to well-being. This field uses metrics such as distribution of income, gross domestic product, consumer surplus, and compensating variation. For example, distributing income more equally is usually beneficial for well-being but needs to be balanced against potential negative side effects, such as a decline in productivity. The economics of happiness, a closely related field, focuses specifically on the connection between economic phenomena and individual happiness. One of its findings is the Easterlin paradox: within a given country, people with higher income tend to be happier than those with lower income, yet overall happiness does not trend upward as the average income of everyone increases. The World Happiness Index, 2023, measures levels of happiness worldwide. The growing academic interest in well-being is also reflected in the political sphere, challenging the gross domestic product as the main indicator of national success. As a result, indices to track, compare, and promote the well-being of populations and related phenomena have been established at both national and international levels. Examples are Bhutan's Gross National Happiness, the UK Measures of National Well-being, and the World Happiness Report. Following this trend, policymakers are increasingly relying on well-being metrics and related factors to inform their decision-making processes. It also affects the field of law, where considerations about how to protect and promote well-being can influence legislation. Well-being is also a topic in various biological sciences with a focus on the biological factors influencing the well-being. Research from twin studies suggests that genetic composition is one of the most impactful factors. Other biological factors include neurotransmitters and hormones that impact positive feelings such as endorphin, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and cortisol. In neuroscience, researchers try to uncover the neural correlates of well-being using neuroimaging techniques. The problem of well-being plays a central role in medicine since medical interventions typically aim to restore, secure, and enhance patient well-being. Considerations of well-being also affect the treatment of incurable diseases, like Parkinson's disease. In such cases, therapies aim to minimize negative effects, helping patients lead productive and fulfilling lives despite their illness. However, well-being is not the only consideration governing medical interventions, and the commitment to patient autonomy is another core principle. This can lead to conflicts when patients act against their self-interest and reject treatments that would improve their well-being. Sociologists examine the relation between well-being and social phenomena, such as race, socioeconomic status, and education. They use both subjective and objective metrics, with some studies dedicated to well-being in general, while others focus on specific domains, such as work, family, and housing, or on particular demographic groups, such as employees or the elderly. Anthropologists are interested in the concept of well-being in different cultures. They seek to understand what people at different times and places associate with a good life, such as the culture-specific norms, values, and practices for achieving personal well-being. A key assumption in this field is that the concept of well-being involves a commitment to what is desirable and an evaluative framework for guiding behavior and assessing lifestyles. Anthropologists compare these commitments and frameworks across different cultures, like the differences between Western and non-Western conceptions of well-being. They describe the similarities and differences, typically without taking a position on which view is superior. Diverse perspectives on well-being are also found in religious and other traditional belief systems, where well-being often serves as a goal of spiritual practice. In various traditional forms of Hinduism, the highest kind of well-being is not determined by objective external conditions. Instead, it depends primarily on experiential knowledge of the self, brought about through practices like self-inquiry and meditation. Buddhism identifies suffering as a central aspect of all existence. It aims to produce well-being by eliminating the causes of suffering, such as desire and ignorance, achieved through the practice of Buddhist virtues like compassion, loving-kindness, and equanimity. From the perspective of Confucianism, well-being consists in virtuous activity as a process leading to sagehood and is associated with harmonious relationships and social responsibility. According to Taoism, a life high in well-being is characterized by effortless action that is in harmony with the Tao, the natural way of the universe, and guided by spontaneous dispositions. The Christian tradition holds that the personal connection to God is a central factor of well-being, which may manifest in virtuous activity or contemplation of God. According to the teachings of Islam, well-being is achieved by dedicating one's life as much as possible to worshipping Allah and fulfilling His will, as expressed in the Quran. Thank you for watching this video.